All right, answers to test 2, semester review. Number 1, use the limit process to find the derivative. So that is a limit as h approaches 0 of f of x plus h minus f of x over h. So as you see, I put x plus h in for the x spot, and then we have f of x here. Next thing I did was, since I have the h on the bottom, I did that 1 over h out front. Then with what's on the top, you need to get a common denominator. So the 3 minus x needs to go to the left, and the 3 minus x plus h needs to go to the right. And I made a mistake right there. There should be a parenthesis right there, and right there, and right there. So my signs are going to be a little bit off. After you do that, then I need to distribute the negative on the top. So that's going to make it a negative 3. It's going to make it a positive x, and it's going to make it a positive h. That's where I screwed up. So this h right here should be positive, which means then the h's cancel. Gives me a positive 1. So this should be a positive 1. And then this should be a positive 1. So that's number 1. I made the mistake on my negative sign. I didn't distribute it correctly. All right, alternative form of the derivative, which is the limit as x approaches c of f of x minus f of c over x minus c. In this case, c is 2, so here's f of x. All right, so here's f of x, here's f of c. Right there, f of c is right there. We plug 2 in for x. So f of c ends up being 2, and then I have x minus c on the bottom. We've got a square root, so that means we need to multiply by the conjugate. Multiply by the conjugate in the numerator gives me 3x minus 2 minus 4. Remember, you're not multiplying the bottom together. Leaves me with 3x minus 6 on the top. Take a 3 out. I have 3 times x minus 2. The x minus 2's cancel. Leaves me with 3 over the square root of 3x minus 2 plus 2. I plug in 2, and that gives me 2 plus 2 on the bottom, and I end up with 3/4. Number 3, you can do the square derivative of the square root one of 2 ways. I always remember that the derivative of square root is always 1 over 2 times the square root. So the 6 stays there, and then 2 times the square root. If you don't like that, then change it to x to the 1/2, and then take your derivative. This is x to the 1/3, so we bring the 1/3 down. 1/3 minus 1 gives me negative 2/3. 6 and the 2 reduce. Over here, the 3's reduce. Move the negative exponent to the denominator. I'm happy with that answer. 4, derivative of sine is cosine. Here, the coefficient stays, so the 2 stays. The derivative of the natural log is 1 over the inside times the derivative of the inside. So the 3's cancel here, leaves me with just 2 over x. So our derivative here is 5 cosine x minus 2 over x. Number 5, product rule here. So first times derivative of the second plus the second times the derivative of the first. Like I said in class again, anytime you're doing product rule or quotient rule, make sure you put your stuff in parentheses. So first, derivative of the second, second, derivative of the first. Notice everything is in parentheses. Then distribute. So over here, I have 2 tangent of x. Over here, the secant squared needs to go to both of these. So I have x squared secant squared, and I have 3 secant squared x. And then that's good enough for 5. On 6, no variable in the numerator, so that means we do not want to do quotient rule. We want to move it up. So only move the variable up. Don't move all of it up. So I move the variable up, so it stays 2/7 here. So negative 2 times 2 gives me negative 4. Subtract 1 gives me x to the negative 3. Move it to the bottom. I get negative 4 over 7x cubed. We did number 7 in class. 8 is take the derivative and plug in. So negative 2 times 4 gives me negative 8. Becomes x to the negative 3. 2 times 1/4 gives me 1/2. Becomes x. Derivative of 4 is 0. I move the x to the negative 3rd down to the bottom and plug 2 in. So 2 cubed is 8. So negative 8 over 8 gives me the negative 1. 1/2 times 2 gives me 1. Negative 1 plus 1 gives me the 0. We did number 9 in class, so that's on the other video. We did number 10 in class, that's on the other video. We did 11 in class. We did 12 in class. We did 13 in class. 14. 14 is one we usually have problems with. Make sure we're doing the chain rule here. So derivative of the outside, inside stays the same, derivative of the inside. You guys usually get that correct. And then the problems come when you start plugging stuff in. So I have to plug 6 in here, and I have to plug 6 in there. So I need to find g of 6. So here's 6. There's g. So that means g of 6 gets replaced with 4. 6 and g prime. So here's 6. Here's g prime. So that's 3. And I waited another step on that. A lot of you guys would take 3 times 4 and make this 12. Remember, you got to evaluate all this before you can start multiplying stuff together. So now I need f prime of 4. So here's 4. There's f prime. So that's 7. And as we said a while ago, 6. G prime of 6 is 3. 7 times 3 gives me 21. Quotient rule, bottom, derivative of the top, minus the top, derivative of the bottom, over the bottom squared. Plug in your 4. So I plugged in the 4. So g of 4, here's 4, there's g, so that's 1. F prime of 4, here's 4, there's f prime, so that's 7. Minus f of 4, here's 4, there's f, so that's 0. I really don't need to even plug in g prime of 4 because that's going to be 0 anyways. I did. It gives me 1/2. G of 4, there's g, so that's 1. So the bottom's going to be 1, the top's going to be 7. 7 over 1 gives me 7. So there are your answers to Test 2 semester review.